Hey guys, this is Tauna. Today we're going to be talking about Bloomburrow. Bloomburrow reveal started today and there was a lot of cards revealed, whether it's, different arts for like the lands and stuff, new creatures, new spells, all that kind of stuff. Lots of different things revealed that I am insanely excited about. I've talked to you guys about this before, about how excited I am for Bloomburrow. And honestly, after today, it could have been potentially a bit disappointing, but it looks really great. So I wanted to kind of do a video kind of showcasing the new mechanics and stuff, talking about like the draft archetypes, the different archetypes for the different creatures and everything, as well as kind of just talk about what we kind of know so far. So we're going to talk about the new mechanics first, because I think that's a good place to start. We're just going to cover some of them very quickly, because they're the ones that are kind of going to be all over the place. And then when I get to specific creatures, I'll talk about the mechanic that's kind of more tied into them, because some of them are going to be more important for certain types of archetypes. Keep in mind that you guys can subscribe. You guys can like the video, share it around and everything like that. I want to be a huge Magic content creator. I'm incredibly excited. I'm trying to push to try and, be able to collab with wizards themselves and be able to reveal cards for you guys. And the more subscribers I have, the more power I have to be able to take to the table. So please, if you can, subscribe. It's a free way you can support the channel. All right, so the first new mechanic here is Offspring, which we saw a kind of little preview of previously, and we knew that this was coming. This is essentially kind of like Kicker. So when you play a card with Offspring, it will have an Offspring cost, and it's basically you can pay that much extra, and when it does, you create a copy of it that will be a 2, it will be a 1/1. So you can see here with this Tender Wild Guide, when you play it, you have the Offspring of 2, and then when you pay that 2, you're going to be creating this little Tender Wild Guide here. Keep in mind a couple things. First of all, it keeps the mana cost, as you can see, similar to how we saw with the previous set, where some of them, when they referred to cards with Modern Horizons, they referred to specific cards, they had that mana cost. It's essentially kind of like copying, kind of like that. It's a token, and you'll see that it's got mana cost actually applied to it already. So that is a very nice mechanic. It looks like it's going to be kind of spread across every different color. There's a specific precon built around it, which we will talk about the precons in a separate video. So again, make sure you subscribe so you get to see that. All the kids are got separate tokens and stuff. There's a lot of tokens, it seems, in this set. Because, anything that has Offspring is going to have a token, which is pretty cool. The next one here is Gift, which again, this one seems to be kind of not tied to a specific color, well, not a specific kind of color archetype, I should say. So essentially what this is when you play it, you can pay the gift cost. So usually that gift is going to be giving an opponent, that gift is going to be giving the opponent something else. So with this one, the Kidnap, when you play it, you can give an opponent, or let an opponent draw a card. And when they draw that card, it's going to do something more powerful for this. Or if you don't do it, then it's going to have, some kind of negative effect. So this one here, if you don't give a gift, then it's going to put stun counters on the card that you steal. We've seen one as well, Departing Gust here. If you don't give someone a gift, then instead of it just exiling something, it flickers it. So it's kind of like, like a generous gift combined with a getaway glimmer or something like that, like a flickers card, and then it comes back with a 1/1. So some very interesting kind of things where you can do it kind of like a modal-ish kind of spell with it, which is really, really cool. Forage is like those 3 mechanics here are all tied to something, so I'll talk to you about those in a minute. And then we've got the Paw Print Seasons. So this is another new mechanic here. It's very similar to like a modal. It's like it is a modal spell. They are modal spells. However, the way they work is essentially you have certain modes that are more expensive. So this one here, you get 5 paws worth, and then you get to choose how you want to do them. So like this one here. it costs 3 pause. Or you can draw a card, and that's going to only cost you 1. So technically you can go like, you can choose the same mode more than once. So you could use this to draw 5 cards if you wanted. You could draw 3 cards and then create a token copy of something. You could draw, 2 cards and then return something to someone's hand. There's lots of very interesting ways you can potentially use this, and there is seemingly a cycle of them, 5 different ones, one for each color there. All right, now getting into the actual kind of the actual mechanic archetypes for each color combination, therefore each kind of critter. So we've got the otters here that are Izzet, and they are all built around casting non-creature spells, spell slinger. So you've got, Alania up here, which copies, let's zoom in a little bit more here. You've got Alania up here, that when you cast a spell, if it's your first instant, sorcery, or otter, other than her, you get to choose someone to draw a card, and if you do, therefore you get to copy that spell. We've got Bria, which we've seen previously with prowess on everything, Stormcatch Mentor, which is just, Goblin Electromancer on crack, Tempest Angler here, which is when you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 onto something, and then you've got the Thunder Trap Trainer down here, which has Offspring on it, and then when it enters, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land, put it into your hand, and then put the rest on your bottom of your library. The interesting thing here as well is because it does have Offspring, you're going to get to do that twice if you pay that Offspring cost as well, which is really cool. We've got the mice here. So the mice are built around basically combat and that Valiant mechanic that we haven't talked about yet. So, we've got Mabel here who's going to buff up your mice as well as, attacking and stuff. So if we talk about, the actual Valiant mechanic, this is a rework of Heroic. When you target something with a spell or ability you control for the first time each turn, you get to do something. So the Seed Glaive Mentor here, when you target something, you get to put a +1/+1. When you target it with a spell or ability, you get to put a +1/+1 onto it. We've got the Flowerfoot Swordmaster here. When you target it with a spell or ability, mice you control, so all mice get +1/+0. Interesting thing as well is this has Offspring, so therefore, if you pay that Offspring cost, you're going to get +2/+0 each time. We've got the Veteran Guard Mouse here. There is 1 card for each dual color, which is essentially kind of like the gold signpost, I think they're called. So this one here is whenever it becomes a target of a spell or ability, it gets +1/+0 first strike, and you get to scry 1. All right, so next up we've got the rats here. So the rats actually have Threshold, so they're built around Threshold. You've got some Surveil stuff here with this Mind Drill Assailant here, and whenever Threshold kind of procs here, you're going to get to do extra things. So like the Shoreline Looter here is obviously kind of like a Ilkor Looter. Looter Ilkor, that's what it is, which is the one that, when it deals damage to an opponent, draw a card, then discard a card, and, it's got Shadow there, so if you bring it up here, it's got, when it deals combat damage to a player, draw a card, and then you discard a card unless you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, but it can't be blocked, so it's actually a better Ilkor. Yeah, it's actually really cool. And then we've got Tidecaller Mentor here, which is, the other kind of gold post, signpost, uncommons. So these ones here are all there's a mentor for each color. So you can see the Tidecaller one there. You've got the Seed Glaive one, and they're all to do with the mechanics as well. So this one has Menace, and then when it enters, if you've got 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you get to return something to someone's hand. We've got the birds here. Now, ignore Maha here. Maha doesn't count. So, we've got a Castrol here. So that's the rare that's about, combat damage. When you deal combat damage to something, when 1 or more birds you control deal combat damage, you get to put a bird out into the from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Put a +1/+1 onto each bird you control or draw a card. Plume Creed Mentor here. Whenever it or another creature you control with flying enters, put a +1/+1 onto target creature you control without flying. So it's actually very very interesting because they work with things without flying, which is a little bit disappointing to me because I was hoping to just build a full bird deck. But this actually reminds me of, I was looking through my bulk the other day, and there's some other like white cards that were, if you attack with something without flying as well. The Seedbod Squire here, whenever it attacks, target creature you control without flying gets +1/+1 and until end of turn. So, you know, kind of buffing up non-flying creatures is very interesting. I really hope that there's like some emus or birds that don't fly or something. We've got the Raccoons here. So the Raccoons as well make use of a new mechanic here. It's whenever you expend, etc., do this. So this one here, whenever you expend 4, put a +1/+1 onto something. Whenever you expend 4, it gets buffed. And whenever you expend 4, gain life. So this one here is the actual face commander from the precon that we'll talk about in a separate video. Expend is basically when you expend mana, right? So when you expend 4, so it's mostly expend 4 that they've shown so far, as you spend your 4th total mana to cast spells during your turn. So if you spend, 4 mana on your turn to cast spells, then you will get procs off of things. So yeah, it can only... an ability like that can only trigger once per turn. The permanent with the ability needs to be on the battlefield to see you spend the mana. Notably, if you spend 5 mana to cast itself, it won't see it. So it doesn't see it if it's cast like on itself, essentially. It needs to be on the battlefield already. So very, very interesting things. Yeah, I like it. It's a very interesting card. Junkblade Bruiser. They actually... Oh, here's Junkblade Bruiser here. Yeah, I like that mechanics. It's very interesting, kind of rewarding you for playing cards and stuff. So next up, we've got the Rabbits. So they are Silencia. I am butchering that name. I apologize. Green-white. They are all around creatures, right? So, tokens. So you've got head of the homestead here, where it's creating tokens, or they kind of buff up tokens with Phineas, buffs up, puts a +1/+1 on each token or rabbit. We've got Warren War Leader here, built around, creating rabbits when they attack and stuff, attacking creatures you control, get +1/+1 until end of turn. Lots of things around, creating tokens and then buffing those tokens up. Most likely going to make use of a lot of the kind of offspring stuff. Warren War Leader with offspring is going to be crazy good, right? Because it's going to make it so that, the additional token offspring baby is going to buff things up or create another rabbit too. We've got the bats. We haven't seen much of the bats, but it's pretty safe to assume that they are built around life gain or potentially making people lose life. So the Moonrise Cleric here, whenever it attacks, gain life. And then we've got the Mentor here, at the beginning of your end step, if you gained or lost life this turn, target opponent loses life unless they sacrifice a non-land permanent or discard a card. That is a very powerful ability. That's a very powerful ability. It kind of reminds me of like Descend, at the beginning of your end step, if this happened, do this. And the bats kind of had some Descend stuff in LCI, so, and life gain stuff too. We've got the lizards here, Rakdos, so they are built around whenever basically has an opponent lost life. So we've got the Mentor here at the beginning of your second main phase. Interesting, they also don't call it post-combat main phase anymore, apparently. At the beginning of your second main phase, if an opponent lost life this turn, exile cards. And then we've got the Cindering Cutthroat here. If it enters with a +1/+1, if an opponent lost life. This reminds me of the Abaddon deck. The Abaddon deck that gives all of your cards Cascade if someone lost, like based on how much life people have lost, and they're going straight into my Cascade deck. We've got the frogs built around flickering, it looks like. This one here, the Mentor, straight up exile something, then returns it with a +1/+1. When it enters, do this, enter like ETBs and flicker. Pretty safe, pretty straightforward with them. We do have Glab over here that is not to do with that, but he's a separate character, similar to like the Calamity Beast. We've got the Squirrels at the final one here. So Squirrels are built around food and foraging, which is another new mechanic. There is a lot of new mechanics in this set. So you got a lot of stuff in here that's creating foods and, doing stuff with foods, and therefore, you know, and also playing from the graveyard as well to do with foods. So you've got like, you know, probably some like self-mill stuff in here as well. You know, making people lose life and then gain life here. We've got, if you forage, do this. At the beginning of your turn, you forage. You may cast a creature card from your graveyard by foraging, etc., etc. A lot of kind of foraging based kind of stuff here. And forage mechanic is basically similar to collect evidence, right? It's basically collect evidence expanded. So with it, you can either exile cards from your graveyard. You need to exile 3 cards from your graveyard or sacrifice a food. I think there was another thing that, what was the other mechanic that was exile cards from your graveyard? Not collect evidence. That's not it. That's the other mechanic that I can't think of at the moment. Basically, yeah, you can either sacrifice a food or you exile cards from your graveyard. Pretty straightforward. You know, if you want to exile things, go ahead, or you can sack those foods. There's, you know, going to be things that create foods. You know, you got Thorn Vault Forager here, add green or add 2 mana of any combination of colors if you pay green there. Also interesting, there's tutor here as well. That's actually very interesting that this guy tutors for a rare. Interesting. So yeah, all kind of built around foraging and stuff, and, you know, playing from the graveyard, and therefore, you know, probably some self-mill stuff in there. So lots of very interesting things, lots of very interesting mechanics. Let me know down in the comments what you guys think. Have a great day and goodbye.